Close your eyes if you're able to, and take a few slow, deep, relaxing breaths. And picture yourself on the top of a beautiful mountain, in the center of a circular grove of trees. And inside the circle, a bonfire blazes forth, lighting us and the grove up with a glorious golden light. And we recognize that this light is the light of perfect love and perfect trust, and it burns away everything that is unlike itself. And we are here gathered together in the presence of the one power that is God and Goddess, and whatever spiritual force that you relate to. And we're grateful for our time that we're spending together. And we ask that we be led so that we can learn our craft in the best and most powerful way for the highest good of all. Thank you very much. And together we say, blessed be. And I'm sure you just said blessed be, but you're all muted, so I can't hear that. All right, so welcome to the class, and I'm going to get started here. Again, I'm going to just remind you all, if you are wanting to say something, go ahead and, if you can find yourself on the screen, go ahead and mute yourself, because if you've just entered the call, you won't be muted. So if you could just mute yourself so we don't hear the background noise or the echoes. And when you want to speak, or when there's a time for that, go ahead and unmute yourself. And if you're on the telephone, go ahead and just press ** when you want to unmute, and I will have to remute you. All right. So tonight I want to start by, first of all, asking if anybody has anything that they would like to say before we get started. Any questions, any comments? Go ahead, and if you just want to, just unmute yourself and speak. Nothing? Okay. So we're going to start out by reviewing a little bit about the primer, A Witch's Primer. And the class that this course is a 6-week course, and we are focusing on actually working our magic on obtaining goals in our life. So it is definitely picking up where the primer left off. And for our purposes here, I want to discuss a little bit about, first of all, the witch's pyramid. And if you remember, the witch's pyramid is four-sided: faith, imagination, will, and secrecy. And I'm going to just work a little bit with that before we move forward. Faith is probably one of the most difficult parts of A Witch's Pyramid. What happens is when we work magic, our doubts inside of our own consciousness about whether we can obtain what it is that we're wanting to work on, or whether we deserve what we are trying to work on, are usually the killers. They're usually the thing that actually stops us in our tracks before we even can get anywhere. So that's probably the biggest issue that I've noticed over the many years that I've been working with people, is their lack of faith in themselves, their lack of faith in their magic, their lack of faith in their ability or their deservingness of whatever it is they're looking to obtain. So part of what we need to deal with in expanding our faith so that we can become more efficient in our magic is we need to start working on self-love and self-respect, because when we don't love ourselves and we don't respect ourselves, that is in itself a magical act that is working against us. It's as if we are working magic and counter magic against ourselves. So until we get to a place where we can accept who we are and where we are and the circumstances in our lives and who we are as people, and love and forgive ourselves for our past mistakes, our magic has very limited power. Now, there are some magicians and witches who don't love and respect themselves, and they seem to have so much pizzazz and oomph in their willpower that they're able to get some results for some time, from some period of time, but rarely do I see those people having lasting results. And usually the magic comes with a lot of strings attached, with a lot of baggage attached to it. Can you please mute yourself if you're not muted? I'm getting a lot of feedback from one of you. So, what I'd like to do this week, you'll notice that when we get our when you get your handouts that we'll upload today along with the recording of this class, you're going to get a lot of stuff. You're going to get a lot of handouts. You're going to get a lot of homework. And we'll go through that because I want you to be able to start working from the perspective of that you're doing this because you love yourself enough to make a difference in your life, not because you need to get some power to overcome some external problems out there. So let's talk about the two levels of the mind and how that relates to faith, and then we'll come back to the rest of the pyramid. So we have our mortal mind and our immortal mind, or our conscious mind and our unconscious mind, or we might call it the God and the goddess mind. The surface mind and the deep mind is usually what I call it. The surface mind is capable of making choices, and it's capable of very little in terms of lasting change. It is able to choose what it wants. It's where your personality lives. It's where what you think you want, where you think you came from, all of the stuff that usually gets in the way of what it is that you want. And what happens is with this mind, if it dumps all of that garbage into the deep mind is basically fertile ground. So think of your surface mind as the seeds and the deep mind as the ground. And so if you're just willy-nilly dropping a bunch of garbage about yourself into your deep mind, you're going to get results no matter what you do. Magic works for you whether or not you're trained. Magic is constantly working. It's the way life is. So when you start getting a bunch of negative results and you notice patterns in your life, you have to not only say, well, what can I do to change or to heal this, but you have to also accept responsibility for the fact that you also had some part in that. Now, again, I'm not a blame the victim kind of guy. And I mean, like if you were raped or if you were abused as a child, I'm not saying you created that for yourself. But I am saying that there is part of your consciousness that was participating in it on some level. So you need to be able to take responsibility for the stuff that's going on in your life and love yourself anyway. Because the self-love is have you ever had like maybe a Thanksgiving dinner or maybe you made a casserole and it was baking in the oven for, an hour, and you ate it. It was all right. It was good. Everything tasted good, but there was this crusty stuff on the pan afterwards. And when you started to wash it, maybe you soaked it for a little bit and you started scrubbing it clean, and the water got really gross and it looked like it got worse, not better, but you just kept scrubbing it anyway, and then eventually it got clean. The same thing is true for our minds. When we start to love ourselves and respect ourselves and accept ourselves where we are, it's like clear water being poured in to our deep mind, and it'll start to get gunky. You'll notice that when you start working magic, sometimes things seem like they get worse, but they're not getting worse. They're getting better. They're getting better because the power is pure. The pure power of that loving energy. The power of love is simply the power of life itself. When that comes into all the gunk inside of our deep minds, it stirs things up and it cleans it out. And then we're able to start to create what we want in our lives. But if you start to try to create what you want without changing the patterns that were enabling it to stay there in the first place, you're going to get very disruptive results. So part of the reason why we have problems with faith is because we've tried so many things in the past and it didn't work for us. And the reason why is because we never addressed the patterns in our deep mind that were responsible for the results to begin with. So next week, we are going to start working with the waning moon energy, and I'm going to give you some banishing exercises next week. We're not doing that this week. But this week, part of your homework is you're going to be making very extensive lists about what you don't want in your life. What you don't want in your life, what you want to get rid of. And this is it's all written out as part of your homework, so you don't have to write all this down, but you'll see that I want a list of what circumstances you don't want, things about yourself that you feel bad about, things that you feel like you need to be forgiven, other people in your life that you need to forgive, all the icky stuff that we kind of brush under the rug and hope it goes away on its own. We're going to bring all that up, and we're going to start working at least on one little thing at a time for the 2-week waning moon period that's coming up. And that's going to be starting in our next class, because that will give us the way, that will open the way for us to start drawing to us the things that we do want. And those things will be lasting. So you don't have to keep doing the same spell over and over and over again to pay your rent each month or whatever. So you'll have some more lasting change. So hopefully that makes some sense. All right. So now, one of the things that we have to do with faith is you have to tell yourself you can do this. You have to tell yourself constantly, I can do this. I can have what I want. I can make a positive difference in the world. I can release old patterns. I can be happy. I can be joyful. I can be free. I can be prosperous. I can be healthy. I can be wealthy. I can have a companion. I can have positive relationships in my life. I can have self-expression. I can have the career that I want. I can have the car that I want. I can have the clothes that I want. I can have all the things that I have always thought that were beyond me, that were for other people, but not for me. So we're going to start also this next week. You're going to, in addition to the lists of stuff that you want to release, you're going to start making lists of things that you want. Things that you want to do, things that you want to be, and things that you want to have. In addition to that, you're going to have an exercise this week, and we'll see, maybe we only have 3 people left in class by next week because nobody wants to work this hard. But the other thing that you're going to be working on this week is an essay. And this essay is going to be a full page, handwritten, not typed, handwritten if possible. And nobody's going to see it but you. So, it's up to you whether you do this work or not. But if you don't do the work, you're not going to get the results. And that essay is going to be a vision of how you would like your life to ideally look. What kind of money you'd be having, what kind of relationship you'd be having, what kind of dwelling you would be living in, what kind of friends, whatever's important to you, whatever. You're going to just write it all out, and you're going to make it as visual as possible. And that's what we're going to be working on this next 6-week class, is getting rid of the things that you don't want, creating the things you do want, and getting you into the mindset that not only is it possible for you to have these things, but these things are on their way and they're coming. And you're going to see some major shifts over this next 6 weeks in your life, and you're going to start seeing results, because that's what we're all about here, is results. If it's not getting results, we don't want it. We're not interested in theory. We want actual results. All right. So I had a friend a while back who heard this technique, and I thought it was brilliant. And it's going to seem a little silly to many of you, but you may want to give it a try. And it's for imbuing your magic with more faith, so that you have more faith in yourself, more faith in the magic, more faith that things are going to work, that you're doing spells on. Because we are going to be doing major spell work over this next 6 weeks. There's a lot of technique that we're doing. But this first week, we're going to get clear on what we want. Anyway, so you may want to try this. It was called an I can. And now I don't know who came up with this, but they were using it. Somebody else came up with it. And it works because it constantly subliminally tells your deep mind, I can do this. I can do whatever it is. I can have, I can be, I can do what I want. So they took a tin can, and they got a beautiful picture of an eye, like a photograph, like a fashion magazine photograph of an eye. And they cut the eye out, and they pasted it on the can, and they stuck it on their altar. And anytime they had difficulty with a spell that they were working on because they were lacking the faith, they would write out what it is that they were working on, and they'd stick it in their I can, because they kept subliminally telling themselves, I can be, I can do, I can have. And at first I thought, okay, well, that's cute. But I noticed this person was getting some pretty impeccable results. So I thought, well, shoot, I'll try that too. And lo and behold, every time I've used the I can, and every time anybody I know that's used the I can has had really good results in getting their faith in themselves and in their magic. So you may want to try that. It's not an assignment, but it's something you may want to do. All right, let's look at the next bit of the pyramid, imagination. A lot of people get hung up on this concept of visualization because they think they can't visualize. Yes, you can. You all can. We all can. That's what we do. Our minds are hardwired to visualize. Don't worry about it. Whenever you're reading a book, you're visualizing. Whenever somebody's telling you a story, you're visualizing. Whenever you're daydreaming, you're visualizing. Whenever you're having a sexual fantasy about someone, you're visualizing. You can visualize. Visualizing is easy. The reason why people think they can't visualize is because people give them these magical trainings, these fakakta magical trainings that have these stupid exercises that don't mean anything to them. Visualize a circle, visualize a square, visualize a star, visualize a red circle, visualize a cube, visualize a blue cube, visualize a blue globe. And there's no passion involved with that. They don't care about a blue globe. They don't want to manifest a blue globe. So why would they want to? So it's because you've been taught to visualize in stupid ways that you think you can't visualize. Of course you can visualize. If you start getting into what it is that you want to be, do, and have, visualization is natural. But don't worry about that. When it comes time for us to work on visualization, I'm going to make sure that you are getting every little last drop of visualization that you need out of this course. I promise you can do it. It's easy. It's no big deal. Okay? Magic is not hard. It's simple. And if it gets too complicated, stop and go back a few steps. Of course, we're going to get really complex in this class. That's what it's for. It's an intermediate class. So there's going to be a ton of stuff. If you get overwhelmed, don't worry about it. Just stop. Come back to your witch's pyramid. Faith, imagination, will, secrecy. That's all you need. Okay? The rest of the stuff is just helping you to get that circuitry in place even more effectively. Okay, will. Now, anybody that's done the Witch's Primer class knows that the Fire Week was a bitch. And if you finished that, congratulations, you get a gold star. I understand this. It's very important to go through a Witch's Primer, the basic training. If you haven't done it, you're not going to get as much out of this class. So you may want to at least go through them simultaneously or come back to these recordings after you finished a Witch's Primer, because you're not going to get as much out of this as you would have gotten had you gone through the basic training. I'm not saying you can't do it. Of course you can. But try to do those because those elemental bodies are building up this witch's pyramid. Now, having done that, what I want you to realize is that your willpower now that you've got a hold of it, now that you've got some sense of control over your willpower, even though it's maybe not as built as you want it, the whole purpose for that is so that you can start willing yourself to focus on what you want, not on making what you want happen. You don't have to worry about making it happen. It happens because the magic will work. Okay? So people get screwed up with that one too. They think, well, I have to will it into being. No, you don't. Your willpower is there so that you can stay focused on your visualizations and on your work. Once you've done your work, it's not up to you to make it happen. It's on its way. And part of it being on its way sometimes will be that you will take actions, that you will do things, but you will be led to do things. You will be doing things in ways that you didn't even realize sometimes that had anything to do with the manifestation of what it is that you're working on. And then lo and behold, it happens. For instance, I needed some capital, some working capital for a business, and I just did the work on it, and I just kept focused on what I wanted, and then I do what we say, and what we'll talk about later is I let it go and stopped thinking about it when I wasn't working on it and got busy doing other stuff. And somebody that I hadn't talked to in, 5 years, that I'd only known, I've only met them in person once, and we spoke on email a couple times. They happened to remember that in passing, I told them that I had this thing and that they wanted to buy what it was that I had. And do I still have it? And do I want to sell it? And of course I wanted to sell it because it was something I wasn't using. And lo and behold, there was my $5,000 or whatever it was that I needed. And I didn't even have to do anything. Now, had I gone into willing it to happen, I might have been able to make that happen. But I would have been off on some road, wasting a lot of time and energy on trying to get the $5,000 together. Whereas when I did it this way, I just let the magic happen and I forgot about it, and it happened, and it just came about. And it was like no big deal. It was no sweat. And that's how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be easy. And when people hear that, they think, oh, but if it's not hard, then have I earned it? Or if it's not hard, it's not worth it. And if it's too easy, those are the kinds of beliefs that we want to be looking at for our waning moon exercises. Because why can't it be easy? Why do we think that we have to grovel and to have pain and have sweat? And I mean, there's nothing wrong with working hard. I mean, I work really hard, but I work hard at stuff I love to do, so it doesn't feel like work. Right? There's nothing wrong with having things come to you easily. So you've got to get that in your mind that magic can do a lot of work for you, and things can happen in ways that you could never have willed them. So your willpower is there now that you've built it to keep your mind focused on the work at hand. It's not there for you to go out and try to create the thing for yourself, because you don't know how it's going to manifest. It's going to manifest however it manifests. Okay. And then secrecy is how you protect your spells by keeping them secret. It keeps them away from any pollution in the world, because people can be kind of creepy. If people get wind of the fact that you are working on something, they might get jealous, whatever. And they will do a lot of weird stuff, even subliminally, to try to thwart your efforts. So you want to keep it silent. Not only that, but magic is all about focused power. And the power gets focused and focused and focused, and then it blooms forth. Like we were talking about the two minds. The surface mind is the seed. It plants it into the deep mind, which is the ground, and then the shoots come up and bloom forth into whatever it is that you're working on. If you don't keep it secret, meaning underground, until it's bloomed forth, it's like you're digging the seed out of the ground. And we all know that it can't get the nourishment of your deep mind if you are blabbing about it. So just keep your mouth shut about the stuff that you're working on. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get help from a teacher or fellow classmates and things like that as far as technique and stuff like that. But as far as the general public, you want to keep it secret and sacred so that you stay very focused. So if we take that witch's pyramid and we can turn it into 4 basic steps. So the first thing you have is a desire, right? You have a desire for something. Do have. And that desire is, like I said before, what fans the flames of your imagination. If you want something, it's easy to image it in your mind. So those two things in combination it's like fire and air. They work really well together. Your desire and your imagination. Now, when you combine your desire and your imagination with ritual of some sort, it generates more emotion. It generates more enthusiasm. And so then that step, so you've got this ritualistic desire imagination going on. Well, that is when your will comes in. So that when you're in your spell work, when you're doing whatever ritual you're doing, your will keeps it focused. It keeps your mind from wandering. It keeps you focused on the task at hand. And as a result of focused, concentrated desire, imagination, and enthusiasm, a thought form is the natural result of it. That's how thought forms are built. Think of that thought form as like the seed. The thought form is then nurtured. It's fertilized, it's planted, and it's nurtured with faith. Faith that it's happening. That's the fertilizer is your faith. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in other classes, but the complement to your faith is falling in love with what you want, having a love affair with the thing that you want. And then we protect this thought form with secrecy until it manifests. And then you can talk about it if you want to. All right. So that's our Witch's Pyramid recap. Does anybody have any questions? You have to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Quiet group. All right, then I guess we'll go forward. Oh, go ahead. Somebody have something?
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's unmuting me. Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, this is Puck Faye.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And I think this is a question I've actually always wanted to ask you since I've been engaging with the Witch's Primer and all your other materials. But
good.
It really does have a little bit to do with I know you talk a lot about how desires are sacred.
Yes.
But sometimes I get confused about what my will is versus what, my higher power's will is or what the goddess's will is. And I also get confused about how to let it go, but also continue to do the work.
Well, what's wrong with you? That should be so easy. Yeah, those are some great questions. Okay, so let's tackle the first one first. The difference between your personal desire and, like you were saying, your higher self or the goddess or whatever. So usually a sacred desire that you are very enthusiastic about, and one that is a desire that is a passing sort of wish, you won't be enthusiastic about it over time. It doesn't last. It's not something that's burning. It's not something, you don't just, somebody doesn't just like really, really, really want to write a novel for years and it not be part of their higher power. There's just no, I mean, that's gotta be, that because it's something that, first of all, does it hurt anybody? Is it something that I really like? Is it something that I love? Does it bring me joy? Does it bring me a sense of accomplishment? Does it bring me all those, what many people call soul qualities? If so, then it's obviously a real desire. Now, the desire to like get revenge on somebody, that doesn't bring you joy. That doesn't bring you peace. That doesn't bring you happiness. That is a something that brings you tension. That brings you that perpetuates hatred. So that's obviously not something from your higher power. Now, if you are, say you have the desire for this particular yellow dress because you saw it in the window, well, it could be that yellow dress is part of your higher power. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting the yellow dress. But what I say is, well, go home, and if you still want the yellow dress tomorrow, then go back and look at it again. And if it's something that doesn't go away and it really makes you feel good, and it's something that is, we're going to talk about in a minute, somewhat in your sphere of influence, then get the yellow dress, right? Okay. And if you don't have the money for the yellow dress, then do the spell for the yellow dress. Nothing wrong with you having the dress. But if it's something that's just a passing fancy, it's not going to be there, next week.
Okay.
And it's not going to, and it's not going to give you a sense of joy. It's going to give you a sense of tension of like, oh, I think I really want that, but boy, I can't afford it. That's not from your higher self. That's not a true desire. Yeah. And what was the other question?
It was more about sort of what you were talking about today in relationship to how your will is to stay focused rather than go get the thing and go make the thing happen.
Yes.
Like, for example, if I'm working on a long project, like a long art project or whatever, sometimes I am not sure how to use my will and let it go at the same time if I continually have to work on this thing.
Right. Well, okay. So if it's something that you're already working on, but you're doing magic to sort of further that, you're obviously not going to be able to forget about the thing itself, but you're going to forget about the spell if you can. And you're just going you're going to allow it to manifest by taking what they say in AA, the next indicated step. You're just going to take it as it comes. Be open, keep a light touch, keep an easy light touch about everything. Try to keep joy in your work, because if you're keeping joy in your work, then you know you're probably doing stuff that's on the same current as the spell that you were doing. If you are feeling frustrated and angry or like things aren't working, then you need to take a break from that, because you're being led to a different path. Because when you do a spell, there's not only the manifestation of it, but there is an intuitive drive that will show you what actions to take. And there might be something that you all of a sudden have a desire to do that doesn't seem to have anything whatsoever to do with that project. But you may meet somebody while you're doing it that is exactly what you needed to get over the hump or whatever. Does that make sense? Mm. So it's not that you do the work and you don't take any action. It's just that you do the work and you don't try to make it happen. You do the work, you do your spell work, and you just do your life. You live your life, and you try to find those where the currents are drawing you to do the activities and the people and all of that are obviously you're being drawn to, that you're being pulled to. It takes some practice to try to follow the more joyous things in life, because we've been trained that anything worthwhile is hard and painful and gross. Right. So magic doesn't work like that. If it's awful painful and gross, it's magic telling you stop doing that for now. We'll maybe come back to that later.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really, really helpful.
Oh, good. Great questions. All right. And please ask as many of those great questions as you like. Anybody else have any questions before we move on? We've got plenty of time, and we've got 6 weeks too, so don't worry. And also don't worry, you will have plenty to do this week. You are going to not be thrilled with the amount of homework I've given you, but you'll like it, I think, once you get into it. Okay. All right, let's talk about sphere of influence. I'm so sorry. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. I've got to get this. My computer is doing something weird. Hang on. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so let's talk about the sphere of influence. Let's look at our sphere of influence on a scale. Let's give it a scale of 1 to 10. And on the lowest scale of influence is something that, like a 1, is something that is, for all intents and purposes, impossible. So let's say you're an amputee and your scale of influence, your sphere of influence as far as growing a new arm might be around a 1. Not that it's impossible. Anything is possible. I mean, it's conceivable. I mean, something maybe could happen where you could grow your own arm, but that's probably not going to happen. Now, on the 10 part of the sphere of influence, filing an insurance claim to get a prosthetic arm. That's something you could do without any magic at all. You could just make it happen. So what we want to work on in our magic is around an 8. We want to work around an 8. 7 if you feel like you really want to flex your magical muscles. Anything below the 8 and 7, it's going to be too, if it starts to seem too impossible, it's going to be too stressful for us. And anything that's too close to 10, it's, come on. I mean, you don't need to do a spell to go to the grocery store and buy milk. You don't need to do a spell for a gallon of milk. You can just go buy a gallon of milk. So 7 or 8 is probably a good place for us right now, because as you'll notice as we go through, even over the 6 weeks, your sphere of influence will expand. And so your 5s of today will become your 7s and 8s next in a few weeks, because you're going to have much more influence over what you thought was not possible for you as time goes on. Now, so you know what? I don't think this is actually in your homework, but I would like for you to do this if you could. When you're doing your list of goals of the be, do, have, and all that stuff, I'd like for you to consider putting to the side of each item where it is on your sphere of influence, 1 through 10. Try to be as honest as you possibly can. And then I want you to do another number, your desire level, 1 through 10. Something that, anything below an 8 on your desire level, if it's on that list, it's because you think you should do it. Right? So 7 or above, let's say, are things that are highly desirable for you. So you want to start to really categorize your list of things so that when you are picking something to work on, that your sphere of influence is around an 8 and your desire level is 8, or from anywhere between 8 and 10. So if you really, really want something, 10, and your sphere of influence is down at a 5, it's that actually sometimes can counterbalance one another. But for us, for now, I'd like for you to just put a pin in that one for a couple weeks, and we'll come back to that one. But do something else that you've got a high desire level, but you feel like it's not that far away from what's capable, because we're trying to really hone in on your on your faith. Because like I said before, that's usually where we falter, is our faith in ourselves. Something you can do also is to just go ahead and when I have that list of stuff you want to get rid of, you could also put, if you wanted to do extra credit, you could do a list of shoulds, the things I should do, the things I should do, be, or have in my life, and make a list of the shoulds. And see how many of those things are sort of duplicated on the stuff you want to get rid of. Somehow have something to do with the stuff you want to release. Yes, Hannah says that the faith is the hardest thing for you. You're in a big club, Hannah. You're in a very big club. So, we try the I can. I know it's silly enough that it really works. Go get just a tin can, just like go get a can of almonds or something, and tear off the label, wash it out. I like the almond can because it has a lid on it. Get it, it's not too big, and then go find or print out, but make sure it's a nice printer, or cut it out of a magazine, a picture of an eye and a photograph of an eye, so it's realistic, and paste it on the can. And you can put a color, like your favorite color or your astral color of like construction paper, so that it's not just a tin can with an eye. So no googly eyes, no pretty eye. And you can just put it on your altar. And anytime you feel like you have no faith in something, write it down and stick it in your I can, and keep reminding yourself, I can have that, I can be that, I can do that. And it'll sink into your deep mind, and pretty soon you won't have that problem anymore. And one of the things on the list of things to release can be your own your own blockages to faith. Because why is it that faith is so hard for you? You need to ask yourself that question and write it down. Write down a list of the reason why I don't think I can have it or I can be it or I can do it is, and write it down. Usually because I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not old enough, my mother was a bitch, my father was a jerk, whatever it is. All of those things. But you know what? It's regardless of whose fault it is that you got where you are, nobody's going to fix it. So you have to. And so it's time. The time is now. You're here for a reason. You didn't just sign up for this class because it was going to be something interesting. You signed up for this class because it's over. You're not going to do that to yourself anymore. Yes, you can do this. And it's not going to be hard. It's going to be fun. I promise. You can deal with it. All right. So then, so do your should list. And when you get through those lists of shoulds, ask yourself, see if you can create that sentence. So like, I should get a degree. Well, then rephrase that and say, I want to get a degree. And if it's true, then it can be a goal. If you want it, then you can find out where on the scale of desire that really is and where your sphere of influence is. But if it's, I should get a degree, and you say, I want to get a degree, and you're like, no, I don't want a degree. Well, then you're done. Get it off of there. You're done. You don't need a degree. If you don't want a degree, don't get a degree. There's a lot of other stuff you can do. A degree is not for you right now. Maybe later, but not right now. If you don't want it, don't do it. But if you're shoulding all over yourself every day, even subliminally, and you don't address the shoulds and ask yourself, do I want this or don't I? And then finally make a decision of either putting it on your list of things that you're going to be working magic on, or whether you're going to just get rid of it altogether, then it's going to always be lurking in there and screwing with you. And that's always one of the reasons why faith is so hard for us, is because we've got these lurking beliefs inside of us that gives us a sneaking suspicion that we can't do what we want to do, or have what we want to have, or be what we want to be, or that it's selfish. That's a big one. I should be helping the world. Well, I promise you are helping the world by getting rid of all this garbage, because it's a toxic waste dump out there of psychic nonsense. And the less that you are contributing to that, the better off the world is. Much better than you going and volunteering for a day. Not that you shouldn't volunteer. I do too. I mean, I do a lot of charity work, but this stuff is better for the world than any of that other stuff. So it may seem selfish that we're working on that we're working on our own goals, but you know what? It's good for the world. If everybody was working on their goals, we'd live in a better life. We wouldn't have people being beheaded all around the world. All right. So where am I? Okay. So let's take another subject now. We're done with the witch's pyramid for the time being. It's time for us to look at, you want a space. You want a magical space. If you live in a place where you can have an altar, then that's what we want you to have. We want you to have an altar. If you don't live in a place where you can do that, and you can't have tools and all of that, then you can at least have a little part of a table somewhere that you can set aside that is sacred for you, that you can sit and do your work, even if it's mentally every day. But if you have, and then perhaps one of the things that you should be working on, or should be, I just should on you, how mean. One of the things you could, if you wanted to, start working on is being in a living space where you can be yourself. Okay, so you want an altar. The altar can be anything you want it to be. A typical altar has either a white or black altar cloth for general purpose workings, depending on what you feel comfortable with, and a colored altar cloth for the planetary type workings that we'll be dealing with later. Now, what you can do instead of having to buy expensive altar cloths, this is a really interesting idea. You can go to like a houseware store and buy colored placemats. And buy one placemat in each of the planetary colors, and you'll get. We don't have to do that this week because we're going to deal with that later, and or just buy one as you need it. Just so like say you're doing a Jupiter, a banishing Jupiter spell, so you want a deep purple. So you go find a deep purple tablecloth and you stick that on top of your regular altar cloth, and you put your spell around that, and that's your altar cloth. You can save a lot of money, and it's really easy to store it, and it's just an easy way of having a planetary colored tablecloth. It's just to use a placemat. Really cool idea. I came up with that myself, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that. It's a really, really cool idea. Usually, most of us, when we set up our altar, we have two large either pillar or taper candles in the back of the altar on the right and left. Usually those are white, and that represents the life force. Not the god and goddess necessarily, but the life force itself, the supreme, that which animates all of us, prana, whatever you want to call it. And then some symbols of the four elements go on your altar. You can either have your tools out there, or if you want to keep those put away, you can have maybe a plant or a bowl of earth or a bowl of salt for the element of earth. Or if you feel comfortable having your pentacle or your plate out there, you can have that. A candle. I just use like a 7-day jar candle, and I usually have one white jar candle, or a sun yellow or a red jar candle representing the fire. And I just always that's always on my altar, even if I'm not working. It's not a spell candle; it's just my fire candle. You can have incense for the air. You can have a feather, whatever makes you feel good. In water, I just usually have a little bowl or cup or chalice of water, and and it's your altar. Do what you want with it, and be creative with it. It should be noted, though, that when you do get an altar and you have an altar over time, and you notice that things are not working so well in your life, you've probably let your altar get dirty or cluttered or dusty. So the first thing you want to do is clean everything off your altar, clean it up, and put a fresh cloth down, wash it, whatever, and put your candles up there. Do everything again, lay it all out fresh, and you'll notice that your life starts to clean itself up a little bit. So another thing that you can have on your altar, and this is something that a lot of people don't use, but it's very, very powerful, and I've always used it, and I'm surprised more people don't, and that's a magic mirror. And it's not a black mirror, it's an actual mirror. And the best one I find to get is a handheld mirror. And you can just go to a beauty supply place, the kind that the cosmetologist will use to help somebody see the back of their head in the other mirror. Just a little handheld mirror, or whatever, Target or whatever. A little handheld mirror. You want to consecrate it like you do with all your tools. And you don't have to keep it on your altar, but keep it by your altar, because when you are trying to get your faith and you're starting a new spell, you can take that mirror, that consecrated mirror, and stare at the reflection and talk to it and say, I can do this. I can have this. It's fine for me to have this money, or it's fine for me to have this job. I can do this. It's happening. And you keep repeating those things over and over until it looks like the reflection is agreeing with you. Because you can't really BS your reflection. You can tell by looking at yourself that it doesn't buy it. So, and then when you're finding things out about yourself, like we were talking about before, the reason why I don't have faith is maybe because I don't feel good enough. Then you take that mirror out and you just start saying, I'm good enough. You're good enough. We're good enough. He's good enough. She's good enough. And keep going at it until you start getting a sense that the reflection agrees with you. So a magic mirror magic is great. And it's not complicated. You don't have to do like major rituals with it. You just use it to communicate with your deep self. And for the most part, if the lights are off in the room and you're just doing candlelight, it's easier for you to talk to your deep self through the mirror, because then you're going to see your reflection more as your other self, your deeper self, rather than as a true reflection like you would see when you're trying to fix your hair. Okay. Anointing oil. I'm anointing oil and incenses. I'm including a couple of just sample recipes for anointing oil in your packet of stuff, because oh gosh, I hope you guys don't quit. There's a lot to do this week. In addition to now, okay, I don't want to make it sound too scary. So your goals and stuff like that, if you work on it maybe 5 or 10 minutes a day, you'll have it all done. You'll have pages of goals and stuff that you want to eliminate by next week. And if you don't get it all done, you can do it when you do it. I mean, it's not like you're a bad person, but try to get it done this week. Try to do those lists that in your homework packet. Try to get your homework done this week, because I will never know. So don't do it for me. Do it for you, because this is going to start the catalyst of the whole 6 weeks for you. Okay. In addition to that, there's a couple recipes in there. You don't have to go out and buy expensive herbs and oils. So there are some more intricate recipes in there for you to try if you want to. But the most important thing is some anointing oil. And all you have to do, if you don't have any cash at hand, is just get a little bottle of extra virgin olive oil from the grocery store. And place and see if you can find a little vial, a little separate oil vial, so that you can pour a little bit in there. And if you can't afford that, then just a little dish. And you're just going to pour the oil in the vial or the dish and put like 1 or 2 grains of sea salt, just what you can get at the grocery store, and bless it. And that's going to be your anointing oil. Then there are also some other recipes if you want to get a little bit more fancy. I've given you several recipes of some of my favorite all-purpose anointing oils, because I want you to get into the habit of anointing yourself every day. Because there are 3 guided meditations that are included in your packet this week. The first one is about 3 minutes long, I think. I kept it really short so that you would do it. And you're going to try to do it to the best of your ability every single morning, as soon as possible upon waking. If you can do it right while you're in bed, that's great. But if you can't, try to do it before you get too awake, because we're trying to get you started in a system of magical thought. So we're keying in to your day. We're focusing your own magical current on your day, so that your day starts to go your way. Then there's another meditation at the end of the day that I want you to try to listen to right before you go to sleep, if possible. And if you can, do it as you're falling asleep. But if you can't, do it when you can. That's another one that's like a 3 or 4 minutes. It's not a long one, okay? Headphones are great if you can use it, if you need privacy. I mean, and I think it works better with headphones anyway, but you don't have to use headphones. There's no like binaural beats or anything like that. And then there's a third meditation. And this third meditation is, I think it might be more like 7 minutes long. Try to do it once a day, sometime, doesn't matter when, as your basic meditation this week, because there's not going to be any spells this week. You're not doing any spell work. You're just getting in the habit. And this meditation is the Orb of Light meditation amped up a little bit from a witch's primer. So it's your grounding and centering, it's your energy center balancing, and your orb of light all kind of in one, and it goes through it pretty fast. So if you haven't done the grounding and centering meditation, the orb of light meditation, and the rainbow power meditation in a witch's primer, you may want to work with those this week a little bit first. Because this one goes through it all pretty fast, so that you can get into the habit of it doesn't take a long time to get this energy flowing. because if you do it every day, it's like quick. So if you can do those 3 meditations every day and do your lists this week, you'll be flying high. Now, after your orb of light meditation, I recommend that you do some anointing, and you can anoint any energy center you want, but at least anoint your brow. It's usually at least your brow and your throat, but if you can, or you can do your wrists too. You can do whatever you want, wherever you feel led to do it. And it also gives you the option of burning a little incense if you'd like. And so I've given you a couple of incense recipes if you'd like to use them. You can use stick incense if that's easier for you, or if you're doing just purification, you can use like a little smudge stick. In general, with incense, I am from the school of less is more. I know it's very dramatic to have billowing incense out, while you're doing magic, but it's not great on the lungs. It is distracting, right? You need a tiny little bit of incense to just fragrance the room and to allow the air elementals to do their work. They don't need billows. If you need billowing incense, do your work outdoors, because you don't want to start breathing a ton of incense. It's not good for you, even if it's organic, which it should be. Okay, so that's what we're doing this week. We're doing our goals, our elimination list, and our daily practices every day.